the best way to start looking at this quality water issue in a more sustainable manner. The next one is about the challenges that come with this issue of water quality, water health management. And one of the issues that came also that we not addressed, that when we talk about water and quality, somebody's already thinking, oh, government does not even have water. Oh, there is no tap water here. And those are all, in my opinion, they are all approaches that come from up. But we've never sat down as a community, as a people, to decide and consult ourselves, consult our communities, and identify the needs. Before I joined politics, I worked at the UN. See, everywhere, we focus on UN. And I remember we went to South Sudan with UNDP. And went to this community, and of course the first assumption was that we needed to put water in that particular camp. And we never, or the communities were never consulted. And of course the mapping, the technology and everything, and we took water a little far away, I mean very close to where they were. Little did we know that the women actually wanted to go and collect water from their stream. And because of the way of collecting their water, they discuss, they share their experience. They have time, with their friends, and also to stay away from home. We were really strong when we put a borehole where we thought would really be very close. In our view, we are just together, there's violence. We're reducing the time for women to do other work. The women left that water source and went and collected their stream. It was very bad. That is an example of a top-down approach. Never ever assume that you know a community better than you know themselves. So the top-down approaches can really, really backfire. And so when we are thinking about how to manage our water system quality, let's consider consultative. The other aspect is infrastructure. Again, when we think about our community, growing up, we did not have boreholes. I don't remember having boreholes. We had local streams. And every week, communities would mobilize themselves to go and clean around the water source. And every child would be asked to carry stones. And now now that I know, I think they were really, really working to protect their water source so that their water is not contaminated. And for me, in terms of infrastructure, as we think about infrastructure, yes, we can think about the big storage and all these other kind of things, but we should also start asking questions of how can we involve our local people in this infrastructure planning so that they know. Because if they do it themselves, they identify themselves, they will own it, and that becomes more and more sustainable manner for them to manage the water system. The issue of access and quality cannot be overstated. I think it's a fact, and Prof has given us data that in Africa we still have a long way to go. But I would like to urge us here that I think from today on, when you talk about water, never forget the word quality. Because we agree, it's a consensus here that it is not enough to have access to water, but also to have quality. Particularly in our marginalized communities. So I would like to also share with you how this work can actually be done by the communities. And And for some of us, or some of you who have done program development, it's what we call a life cycle. But in most cases, particularly in terms of water, we are usually overtaken by the big gun, the big shots, the big technologies, the big machineries and all. But in communities, I know there are communities that identify their own water sources. 2 weeks ago, I lobbied for a water source in my community. And so Ministry of Water came with their machines and started doing everything that they do with their machines. But the old man stood up and said, my son, don't waste time. Don't waste time with your machines. Just go under that tree. In this community, where that tree is, it means that there is water there. And everybody thought the old man was just being crazy. And these people, the Ministry of Water team had spent from, I think, almost 7 hours. They couldn't see the water. And they were jumping all over the place. And when they went under that tree, just 2 weeks ago, not very far away from my home, when they went under that tree, they actually got so much water that their machine did not work. They just came and the old man said, you right, put your thing here. And when the machine reached there, the water they got, they have actually never got it area. Wow. Because they have been depending so much on their machine, but not the local knowledge. So the issue of identification, the planning, the implementation, let's give our communities, our indigenous knowledge and opportunity to help us to address the issue of water. Otherwise, we are going to move all around like they did 2 weeks ago, and yet we have a solution just right there. And this also calls for participation of our people, but most importantly, the ownership and the resilience of our people. And if we are thinking about participatory process of development that we read in books, if there's a place that we need to do, is start going back to those people who actually tell us what to do and how to address the quality of our water. Going back again, growing up, I don't remember having a lot of stomach upset when we were growing up. And yet we were drinking water from the stream that my brother was talking about. I think people had figured out how to protect the water source that they have. We have some of our seniors here that this borehole thing, I'm sure it came after some time. But like I said, our communities had their own knowledge on how to manage their water source. That water source that I'm showing you is also not very far away from my community. It used to be a local stream. And that is a stream with big stones to go and protect. And the whole community would be mobilized to go and slash and remove any fecal matter around that water source. And eventually, the pipes came, the cement came, and here we are having that water source there. For me, those are some of the basic that our communities can do. Before we think about so many big things, and we start crying for money, and somebody comes to give you money on loan, very expensively, and wants you to drill it where they want you to drill it, right? Or even with the package of living some of your culture so that you do that. So for me, those are some of the things that we need to start thinking about as we think about our own community-based approaches on how to manage our water system. Now, some of these community approaches, like I noted before, is really based on our local knowledge. And this local knowledge can actually be very flexible. Although at the moment, because of the so-called development that we see, we kind of try to disregard our local knowledge. But most importantly, it also empowers our people. It makes them feel judged of their own resource. And above all, it brings in an element of inclusivity. Because most of our development approaches, including the water sector that we are talking about, tend to assume and neglect our people. And after the problem, and yet the problem actually was born by them. It has also shown to be very cost effective. When you look at the amount of money we invest in our water quality approaches, the conventional ones, of course there's a lot of water purification, there's now solar system coming, and all these kind of things. But when we involve our people, use their local knowledge, we should be able to use it more cost-effective manner. But there's also an element of accountability and also monitoring some of these things. Because again, I have seen in other countries where I've worked before, is that we put so much money in some of these things, and we leave the monitoring to the people who do it. But I'll share with you some of the case studies, how communities have actually started identifying their own water problem and managing it themselves, monitoring it, maintaining their own water source. So I think for us to be able to appreciate that our communities are better placed to manage their own water sources, and manage the quality of their water, then we need to really engage them in the whole life cycle of water resource management. Now, some of these case studies are actually true stories, right? I didn't want to import from somewhere, but share with you the things that I've seen. One of the things that is happening a lot in my country at the moment is government is investing quite a lot of money at the community level. And these monies are coming to what we call the Village Saving and Loans Association. Since we joined Parliament, we rooted for a rural development approach. And we are putting about 300,000, about 100 million is about $300,000 in a parish. I don't know how your local government is organized, but a parish has like about 5 villages, or maximum 10. So government gives this money to a parish into this village saving group, and what is coming out of the context of water quality management is that some communities are using their money actually drill one water source. Instead of having small dotted boreholes, they are beginning to put their money, to use their money to put a one water source, which is going to serve maybe some of the villages around, but also sell it. But the water they are selling out is now quality water. It is not that which is just drilled and you're drilled and you're dumped there with your borehole and nobody cares what is happening. So that is one of the community approaches that I see that if it's rolled out, it would really, really help communities start looking at water quality as one of the areas that you need to invest in as a community. We've got wash committees, and this is water, sanitation and hygiene committees. And in our villages, in my constituency particularly, I've introduced competitions for the most hygiene home. If you have all the hygiene things you have, your member of parliament will reward you. You have no idea how communities making sure that they have a rack, local rack for their place. You have a kitchen, you have a container for keeping your water. I'm also encouraging them to start harvesting their water for those who have corrugated iron sheets anyway. Because in my community, there are still those who have grass patch houses. So in my view, I think some of this could be One of the very simple, very basic, doesn't need a lot of money. But what it needs is mobilization, creating awareness, and also making sure that our communities own their own, they write their own solution for their own local problems. Because I think as people, we need to start finding our own local solutions other than waiting for somebody to come and do it for us. There is also what we call water user association, which I think is all over because this was introduced, I think, some time back by WHO, which I'm sure it is rolled out all over the place. But what is unique about the water user association that I've seen is that they make sure that, one, they encourage the community, the users, to contribute money. So that when the water system breaks down, they should be able to maintain themselves. The other thing I've also seen is that I am seeing now that when they contribute money, they invest it in water purifiers. There are those tablets and all that have started coming to the market that they're beginning, the users beginning to start enforcing, making sure that the users actually purify their water. The other thing which is also coming, not so much from the government, is that they're introducing the solar powered water as well. But the other aspect that needs to be emphasized though, that as they put the solar up, is that solar only pumping the water, or we are using the solar also to ensure that the water is actually treated. So I think there's some bit of integration, some bit of mainstreaming the issue of quality in every aspect of water infrastructure that we need to start thinking about from our communities, but also at government level. So those are some of the examples that I could share, but again, we will always share a bit more in that. Now, as we do all this, we need to look at the enablers. How do we create an enabling environment for our communities? Much as they have the indigenous knowledge, much as they have their own local solutions to their problems. There are some of these key things that I thought I needed to share. One of it is partnership. Our communities need to be supported. We need to mentor them. As we sit here, go and start from your family, back home in the village. Like today we were to go by the water. How good is the water you're drinking? Okay, call back home. You're partnering with them. You're giving them knowledge. You're empowering them. And partnership shouldn't just be seen in terms of money. Yes, we need a lot of money. We need the private sector. We need government. We also need religious leaders. We need traditional leaders and cultural leaders. Because I think the issue of quality of water and safe water is really a shared responsibility, as I stated earlier. That this partnership should go beyond the funding, but look at the available structures that we have in our communities to make sure we raise awareness for our people, but also mentor them and empower them to be able to do that. Prof had talked about the digital world. This is a time that we can start using the tools like the solar, like the data that we have. What is it that is available in our space that we can actually use to make sure that our communities are enabled to be able to manage the quality issues. And I think I've already talked about the integration of our traditional but also scientific knowledge. Let's not forget that our traditions are actually more powerful than some of these things. I'm sure that in our communities there are even local medicines that they use in those, olden days that they put in their water and they drank that water. I was telling you, I never had any waterborne problem growing up in the 70s, although, women are not supposed to tell their age, but I grew up in the 70s anyway. And so people who know our history very well, that time during Idi Amin's time, We didn't have hospitals, we didn't have the medicine, these things for what they call them, the metro needles, or we didn't have that. But we survived on our own traditional medicine, our own traditional approaches, so making sure that the water we were taking were actually treated, and it was quality and it was safe. Of course, we need a lot of institutional support to enable these communities to be able to manage their water health. And of course, the government, the non-state actors, and everyone who cares and knows that water is actually life. Because we talk about water is life, and I think we stop at when we are drinking it in a glass, or when we are in hospital and they start saying, oh, drink a lot of water. That is where we stop with water. And I hope that this conference will remind us that actually the issue is beyond the life connotation we put in water. But it's so much about standing up, rising up now, and doing something to ensure that to have the better life from water, then we need to seriously start thinking about how to partner and do this work together. And the investment bit of it is also, of course, very, very critical. A prof has talked about the startup, the youth startups in Uganda. As a country, we're really trying as much as we can to promote innovation. And our focus has been innovations around social services, where there's water, there's education, and there is health. All that social service kind of sector. Because we consider services as one of the key sectors to drive our economic growth. And so some of these investments really are critical and pertinent, and I hope that other African governments will start looking at water as one of the key areas that need to be taken care of and put in a lot of investments. Okay, I need to end here. That's my last. And somebody should be so scared about the word death. Yes, I think as when somebody looks at death, then they start being very serious.